Salut tout le monde, it's your boy Lukael. Welcome to my 2024 games tier list / gaming year in review. I'm not really sure what to call this video, but it's Christmas. At least it's gonna be Christmas when this video goes public. Of course, I'm recording this a little bit in advance. So whether you're watching this on Christmas because you happen to be spending it alone, or whether you're watching it a little bit later, I just want to wish you a very Merry Christmas, some happy holidays. I don't know about you guys, but personally, I've always really loved Christmas ever since I was a kid. It's probably my favorite holiday, not so much because of the religious aspect, but just because I've always loved winter and snow. I love the festive atmosphere. I love all the decorations in town and all the lights. Even the music, even though it seems like a lot of people don't really like Christmas music, but I love it. So I hope you're having a good one. I hope you get to spend some nice time with your friends, with your family. The year is almost over. 2025 is just around the corner. And boy, what a year it promises to be. Truly, neither the hands of time or the decline of society seem to be stopping, but hey, at least we've got some fun video games to distract us from the horrors. So I know I called this video a tier list, but I really just wanted to take some time to talk about some of the games that I've played this year. One thing that you may or may not know about me is that I love compiling lists. For some reason, I love me some spreadsheets. I love making lists. There's just something very satisfying about it. And so in my own time for the past few years, I've been making these lists of the games that I finish and writing like these little mini reviews that I usually only share with friends and family or like on Twitter before it went to shit. But now that I have the channel, I thought this could be a fun little tradition where every year around the end of December, I can make a little video and talk to you guys about all the games that I played. Also the games that I don't play in the channel, because obviously I play a lot of games outside the channel, which I don't really get a chance to talk about. I also very, very rarely make these videos where I'm not playing a game of just me sitting here and talking to you, because I actually find it really difficult. You wouldn't think I find it hard after all these years of making videos, but it's still quite hard for me to just sit here and talk to you. I'm just very awkward on camera when I don't have a game to talk about. And so believe it or not, this is my second time recording this video, because I recorded it once and I found it so cringe and so bad that I just scrapped the whole thing, and I'm trying it over again this time, and hopefully it comes out a little better this time. I just really overestimated my ability to make a long form video unscripted without any help, because I'm not good to like improvise on the spot. So I've actually been taking a lot of notes about what I'm gonna say instead of just kind of coming up with it from the top of my head. So I'll be using my notes to stay on track. Please be forgiving if I seem like I'm reading from these a lot. That's kind of the only way I can get through this video. So I've got my ho 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 shirt. I've got my Santa hat, so sit back, relax, grab yourself a nice little hot beverage. Not me, it's just cold water, because I don't actually like hot beverages. But hey, let's talk about some games. So before we jump into this year's list of games, just in case you're curious, here's the games that I played in 2023, last year. Then the games I played in 2022, in 2021, and in 2020, which is the year I started making these lists. Here we can go quickly over the categories I've made. So at the very tippy top, we've got exceptional, which is for games that are just peak, that are just like flawless, just really stand apart from the rest. Games that I now consider part of like my favorites ever. Then just below that, we've got games that are like excellent, so they're really amazing in most or every aspect. They just maybe didn't have that little extra something to get into exceptional. Then you've got games that are pretty good, you know, they may not be at the very top, but still had some fun with them. Maybe there were a few flaws that held them back, but overall they were still pretty good. Then you've got games that were all right, you know, you had some fun with them, but that was about it. And then if any, we'll have games that are just meh. I don't really think there's going to be a lot of games in that category, because if a game is not good, I tend to just not finish it. And these are all games that I finished, so maybe I'll even add a bad category, which I probably won't even use. So let's get started. The first game that I finished this year was Feed All Monsters, which released in 2023. This is a small indie game that's all about like puzzles where you need to move your little character around and feed a bunch of monsters in a limited number of moves. It's fairly simple, but it was still pretty fun. Like most of these puzzle games, I think it's most enjoyable in short sessions. You know, it's not really the type of game that I like to play for a very long time, so I would open it every now and then, do a couple levels. It does have 200 levels, so there's quite a bit of content in there. And they also keep introducing a few new twists to the formula throughout to switch things up a little bit. It can be quite challenging, especially near the end. There were some really hard ones. I would say this is gonna take a long time because I haven't actually ranked these yet, so I have to put myself on the spot and decide how I feel about them. I think it is the definition of a pretty good game. This is perfect. It's gonna land right in the middle so we can gauge the other games by kind of comparing it to this one. But I do recommend you check it out if you haven't. So next on the list is 20 Minutes Till Dawn, also from 2023. Some of you are probably familiar with Vampire Survivors, which got really popular a few years ago. Ever since it came out, there's been all these Vampire Survivors like copycat popping up everywhere. I think on Steam they call them roguelite action. It's the games where, you know, you're just a little guy in the middle of the screen and then you get swarmed by like hundreds of enemies and you need to get all these weapons and upgrades to kind of auto battle your way through them. I feel like they should just go ahead and call it Survivor type games because they really are based on Vampire Survivors. I don't actually know if that was the first game of that style that came out, but it's definitely the one that popularized this style. And so this is kind of all it is another Vampire Survivor clone. It does have a nice monochrome look to it with just some splashes of color, which is nice. It's got multiple characters and different weapons you can try. But it does only have 3 stages and only 1 music track in the whole game, so it does get old pretty quickly. But this one was free on Epic, so I tried it, completed it, and it was alright. I would say it was alright. I'm gonna take this off, it's actually too warm in here. Next, we've got our first game completed on the channel, of course, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So some of you may have watched the playthrough. I don't think a lot of you did. This really was not one of my most popular playthroughs on the channel. You know, I jumped into it thinking, oh, you know, Zelda is such a big franchise. I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to watch it. Not really. Unfortunately, I never got to play Breath of the Wild on the channel. I think this one might have been a little more popular, but Tears of the Kingdom was an incredible game. It is a bit of a rethread of Breath of the Wild, but if you look at it objectively, it's bigger. Arguably, it's better in almost every way. Like, the world is much bigger. You've got Hyrule, but then you also have the sky, you have the depths below it. But because a lot of it is very similar to the original, it doesn't quite hit the same. I think Breath of the Wild felt more special because it was the first one where we got to kind of get that type of Zelda experience. But the building mechanic was a lot of fun. People got really creative with that one, doing some pretty wacky shit. And yeah, there was just a lot of freedom about how you tackled each of the challenges. But I did think it was a bit of a safe sequel because so much of it was very familiar. You know, the world of Hyrule didn't change that much. There weren't that many new types of enemies. Before the game released, I remember really wishing that they would make Zelda playable in this one because in some of the earlier trailers, it looked like she was maybe going to be playable, either replacing Link or maybe there was going to be like a co-op mechanic with Link and Zelda, which I think would have been fun. Just something to kind of switch it up a little bit, you know? I did think it had a stronger story than the first one. It's got a beautiful soundtrack, just like the first one. Also has a very epic finale with the dragons and everything. So I don't know if I would place it in exceptional. I think Breath of the Wild I would definitely place in exceptional, but because this was just a little bit more of the same, I think it gets taken down just a little bit, and I might move some stuff around later anyways, like this is not definitive yet. Really had fun with that playthrough, even just putting it together and like adding little fun edits to it. So if you haven't checked it out yet, and I'm gonna say this for every game that I completed on the channel, but if you haven't checked out the playthrough yet, you should check it out. Next game is a little to the left, which is a nice little indie game that I played on Game Pass. It actually ended up being quite different than I expected. I thought it was more of this relaxing kind of idle game about moving stuff around and like placing objects and items. But it turned out to be a bit more of a puzzle game, actually. It is quite charming and pleasant, and it's got a nice hand-drawn visual style, which I appreciate, but sometimes it wasn't really clear what you had to do, and I did get frustrated like a couple of times at some of the more cryptic solutions, where like I didn't really understand what you want me to do here, and like I don't want to say that's the game's fault, that's probably just my fault, but I'm just sharing what my experience was like. It is also quite short, so it is what it is. I would say it was alright. I had an okay time with it. Next, we've got Soul Hackers 2, which I don't know how many people are actually familiar with this title. I mean, it's not super obscure, but it wasn't like super mainstream either. But it's an Atlus RPG in the line of the Shin Megami Tensei or Persona games. It's more like a lower budget, kind of shorter, more condensed version of these games. It's not as long, and the combat system is like a little bit more streamlined, a little bit simpler. The SMT games, you know, they tend to be very, very long. I think Persona 5 is like 100 hours at least. This one was more like around 30 hours. It does have some very, very basic kind of boring dungeons where you just get a map and you run around and you get random encounters and there's not really anything else going on. A bit like the earlier Persona games. The story was pretty good, but it did end up feeling a little bit undercooked. It doesn't quite escalate enough, you know, it feels like they should have let it simmer a little bit longer. But I think the game was held up by some very good writing in the dialogue, a likable small cast of characters, very good art direction, both in the character designs and in the character portraits. Most of all, it's held up by a very, very good protagonist in Ringo, whom I really loved. She's snarky, she's funny, she's clever, she's got a nice sense of humor and a great design, I thought. So Ringo really takes this game up a few notches for me. I would say Soul Hackers 2 was pretty good. Like, I had some fun with it, and then when I was done, I was like, all right, I've had enough of it. Next, we've got Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga. One thing about me, I love the Lego games. Me and my girlfriend have played almost all of them. I think we only have like a few left to finish. I think they're the perfect couch co-op games to play with your partner because they're charming, they have very simple mechanics, and Star Wars is just a perfect fit for Lego. They packed a really impressive amount of content in this one. They really do go through all 9 movies, and it's not like they rush through them either. You get quite a few stages for each movie. You get hundreds of characters, you get space battles, you get like a ton of side objectives and unlockables. It's also pretty funny, it's got a nice sense of humor. You can spend a really long time just trying to do everything in the game, which we did. It can be a little bit buggy sometimes. And one thing I didn't like was they got rid of the dynamic split screen thing that was in some of the earlier Lego games, where like if both characters are on the screen, you share the screen, but then if you move apart from each other, then the split screen kind of like happens dynamically. So that was a bit of a shame, but we still had a lot of fun with it. I would say, I think I would place it just below Soul Hackers 2. I know this is hard. Did I like it more or less than Soul Hackers? I think I had a lot of fun with it just because I was playing it in co-op with my girlfriend, and so that always makes it a little more special. But yeah, I think that's a good spot for it. Next is Picross, Lord of the Nazarick. So this is another thing about me. I love Picross. I really got addicted to it. I think the first Picross game that I played was that little Pokemon Picross game that was on the 3DS. And that's how I discovered it. I was like, oh, this is so much fun. So I tried finding more games like it. And on the Switch, there's so many Picross S games. I think by now there's like 9. And I've played pretty much all of them. So when I was looking for more Picross games, I found this one, which is made by the same people that do Picross S. And it's really just the exact same game, except for some reason, they made a crossover with some obscure anime, which I don't even know what the name of it is, but so you get the puzzles, but then you also get these like dialogues and cutscenes between characters from the anime. I didn't know anything about it, so I just kind of skipped all the dialogue and I just stuck to the puzzles. And the puzzles is the same old Picross, so it's fun. The Picross games, they're like perfect for if you're going to the bathroom to poop, or if you're like in the kitchen making dinner while your stuff is cooking, you can just play a little bit of Picross. However, in this one, there is only one song for the whole game, and usually the Picross games have like a few different songs, and the music is actually pretty good, so that was a little bit disappointing. And I think I might also finally be getting a little tired of Picross because I've played so many of them by now, so I guess I would place it at alright. The puzzles are fun. My cat's like eating his own hair again. Picaro, que tu fais le bébé? Que tu fais le faux? Alright, the next game is, how do you pronounce this? Theater Rhythm? Final Bar Line. which is the Final Fantasy rhythm game. I think it's the third in that series. The other two were on 3DS. This was the first one on consoles, which I actually was happy about. I was like, oh, this is cool. We get to play it on the TV. You get to hear the nice music on something other than the shitty little 3DS speakers. And I've played the previous ones also. And of course, Final Fantasy, it's the perfect franchise for a music game because all the music in Final Fantasy is so beautiful and there's so much of it. And it's pretty fun. You get to collect all the little characters and like they do little side quests and they try to kind of include the Final Fantasy stuff in the game itself. But I feel like they didn't really do it as much as they could. Like a great example of a rhythm game that includes the franchise in the game more is the Kingdom Hearts rhythm game. It's called the Melody of Memory, I think. That one, like you control Sora and the party and like you have to hit the Heartless with your Keyblade on tune with the music. That one really felt like you were playing a Kingdom Hearts music game. This one, you just kind of play the notes, and other than the Final Fantasy characters and the songs, there's not really that much in the gameplay itself, you know? And considering there's quite a few theater rhythm games, I was a little disappointed that there was like no innovation in this one at all. It's just the same game again, but on console. The one thing that really annoyed me about this game is the monetization system, where they've always had a bunch of DLC before, and like, I get it, I understand why they do it, but it was especially bad with this one where like you had the normal version, and then you had like the digital deluxe version, and then you had like the true super deluxe digital version to have like all the songs, but then even that version didn't have all the songs in it. It was just a mess. Like, I wish they would just put all the fucking songs in one version of the game, you know? They even locked some of the fan favorites like To Zanarkand or Suteki Dane. Don't make me pronounce Japanese, please. But yeah, a bunch of these were like locked behind specific versions, which I didn't like, so. But other than these personal grievances, it was still a fun game. I would place it just below Lego Star Wars. It was pretty good. I had fun with it. It does offer a lot of replayability and challenge. Like some of the higher difficulty songs are like impossible. I cannot imagine that any human being would process the notes as fast as they come. It's really crazy. But anyways, I do love these little rhythm games. So the next game is another one completed on the channel. Of course, it's Papers, Please. I thought it was a really, really fantastic game. It's such a unique and creative idea of like you're what's it called? Not a border patrol, an immigration officer, kind of. Just a really creative concept, very original for a game, and they did it to perfection. It has like its own little fictional country with its own history, and I love how almost every day they kept introducing new mechanics or like new types of papers or like new rules that you had to obey. I love how much story they managed to tell through just the gameplay itself and the characters that you get to meet. So many memorable little interactions like Georgie. I could never forget fucking Georgie. That was so much fun. And yeah, you can make different choices. There's a lot of different paths you can take and a lot of different endings you can unlock. Just a lot of little unexpected twists. In fact, I loved it so much, it kind of made me want to get a desk job again. Like while I was playing it, I was like, you know what? If I had to do this for a job, I wouldn't mind it. This is kind of fun, but no. I think this is only a testament to how fun the game is, that it actually made me want to get a desk job again. It is kind of hard to compare some of these games though, because you've got something pretty small, like a little indie game like Papers, Please, and then you're trying to compare it to something like Tears of the Kingdom, which is a massive game. So I'm trying to be objective and compare them based on like how well they're designed and like how much fun I had with them, even though they're like different lengths. Papers, Please is definitely excellent. Is it? It's really hard to compare it with something so big like Zelda, you know? I had so much fun with both of these games in very different ways. Because with something like Zelda, you look at the massive soundtrack, like the epic story, all the character designs, and like the different gameplay styles. It's really hard to compare with something like Papers, Please, which is a very like focused experience that like it does one thing and it does it really well. So how do you kind of compare them? I'm kind of tempted to put Papers, Please above Zelda because I really think they did a great job with that one. And it's so unique. You know, where Zelda, it's good, but it's not that unique. Did I put Papers, Please in exceptional? I'm almost tempted to put it up in exceptional. Because there's really nothing wrong with it, you know? To me, it's a perfect game. So it's just about like the scale of it, or like how much it really resonates with you. And some of these I've also played like a pretty long time ago by now. This is going back earlier in the year, so I'm a little bit more hazy on how I felt about them in the moment. I mean, both of these games are kind of exceptional. Now I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't make an exceptional category. Maybe that's too high. I'm gonna leave it like this for now, but I almost kind of want to make Papers, Please higher than this. Let's leave it at that for now. And also, please note, it looks like I'm putting a lot of thought into this, but please don't take any of this seriously. Like, this is a tier list just for fun. This is just kind of how I feel in the moment. I really just wanted to have an excuse to talk about the games, but like their rankings, they're not really that serious, you know, it's just for fun. So if you disagree with any of this, which I think you're bound to because everyone has different opinions on these things, please don't get mad at me. Just leave some comments and we can talk about it. I would love to hear your thoughts about some of these games. Next we have We Love Katamari. This is the Reroll plus Royal Rêverie edition, which the original released in 2005, but then this one that I played on PC, that released in 2023. So Katamari! I fucking love Katamari so much. It is one of my favorite franchises. I love these games. I think it's such a fun, brilliant concept of just getting to roll a bunch of things. And if it was just that, it would be fun. But the whole universe they created around this, with all the wacky characters and the king of the cosmos and the little prince and like all the fun visuals and the absurd world they live in, is just so much fun. Also, the soundtracks are some of my favorites in all of gaming. I just love the vibe. Their soundtracks I listen to all the time. They're just so full of joy and like positive energy. Like, you can't be in a bad mood while playing Katamari. Like, if I'm in a bad mood, I will just play some Katamari and I'll feel better right away. And so I think this was like the second game that they then like remade. So some of the stages in this one I did play in Katamari Forever, which was kind of like taking from all the previous titles, but it was still a ton of fun. It's hard to rank compared to these because it's such a different kind of game. So I just love Katamari so much. Of course, it doesn't bring like the emotion of a story like Zelda, and it's not as unique of a concept like Papers, Please, because there's other Katamari games, but I just love it so much that I have to place it up here. I think just below maybe Zelda. Next, we've got Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which released in 2019. So I am a big fan of the Metroidvania games. Not so much of that term though. Like, it's a bit of a mouthful, and I also don't really feel like Castlevania are really Metroid-style games. Because in Metroid, the whole thing was you explore the map and then you need specific abilities to get past certain points. But like, Castlevania wasn't that type of game for the longest time until Symphony of the Night, so... But I digress. I haven't actually played a lot of these types of Castlevania games. Like, I did a few of the Game Boy Advance ones. So this is pretty much all it is like a spiritual successor to the Castlevania series with like a modern take on that style. And it's probably the best game of that specific style that I've played, if you don't count like Hollow Knight and some of the other Metroidvania indies. It's a little rough around the edges. Like, the crafting and the side quest systems are pretty average to mediocre. But I do like that you keep learning new abilities from defeating the enemies. There's also a little bit of customization where you can change what the main character looks like, which is nice. I would say it's pretty good. I think this would be a good spot for it. It's pretty good. It's nothing that amazing, but I did have fun with it. I'm just glad it exists because I think this was a game funded on Kickstarter by one of the original creators of Castlevania. And so it's fun, you know, the community came together, they funded it, and they allowed him to kind of make a spiritual successor to his own franchise, since it looks like Konami doesn't really care about Castlevania anymore. So good on him for making this one. Next, we've got Power Wash Simulator, which is a game that I think must sound like a joke to anyone that hasn't actually played it. but I think anyone who's played it kind of understands the appeal. I unironically loved it. It's simple, but it's satisfying. This isn't a one that I would play really by myself. I would always play it with some friends, like either with my friend Audrey or like with my brother. And it's the perfect kind of menial task to spark some interesting conversations. You know, every time we would play this game, we would have these very interesting discussions about a bunch of things. And this game just kind of offered us the perfect setting to do that. I like to think of it as reverse Splatoon. You know, in Splatoon, you spread all the paint around, and this one, you get to wash things instead. They've also added a bunch of updates to it. There's a few crossovers with other things like SpongeBob and Final Fantasy, which I thought was cool. I think I would place this one pretty high. Like, I had more fun playing Power Wash with my friends than I did probably playing Theater Rhythm. I think I would place it this high. It's pretty good. Next, we've got, oh boy, Catherine Full Body, which the original released in 2011, the Full Body released in 2019. I'm gonna try not to dive into like a 30 minutes rant about Catherine, but I've got a long history with this game. It's probably the one I've got the biggest love-hate relationship. This one and like BioShock Infinite, where like there are games, there's some parts I really like, but then there's some parts of them that I really hate. So before I even get into the full body aspects, let me just talk about the original Catherine. It's a game I really love because it's so unique and creative. Like, there's really no other game like it. I think originally it was pretty much just a tech demo for what the Atlas games could look like on the PS4 before they made Persona 5. So they came up with a concept that's pretty simple. You just get these block puzzles at night, and then in the daytime you got like this dating sim kind of thing. But I think it really shines because of its amazing art direction, some really fun character designs, the interface, and like just how it looks and how it sounds is great. It's got a really cool soundtrack, some really chill songs that you can vibe to in the bar. And the puzzles, they have like these remixes of classical songs, which is cool. And what I liked about it is that there's not actually many games that explore these more mature themes like, you know, relationships and marriage and betrayal and adultery, sex, you know, all these things. They happen in games, but they don't really get explored that much. And so I thought it was an interesting idea to make a game that's about that, but explored in kind of a fun way. It's a refreshing concept. The problem is they don't really do it that well. Like, they don't really commit to it. First of all, because the relationships are kind of weird and childish in the way they're depicted. A lot of the interactions between the characters are just kind of strange and unnatural. Maybe some of it is just lost in translation, but it could have been a lot more interesting. And also the whole game is about kind of letting you make your choices between the two different paths. But the game kind of decides for you. Like, no matter what you do, the events are kind of the same until like the very final ending cutscene, which is disappointing. To me, it's a game that screams of wasted potential. I feel like it could be so much more than it ended up being. And it's all kind of tongue-in-cheek anyways. Like, it's not a game you're really supposed to take that seriously, but I don't know, I just feel like it could have been handled better. There's also quite a lot of like problematic elements with it, where the way they handle the trans character in it is like really bad. All the characters are like kind of weirdly homophobic about like one of their friends. I don't know, it's just, there's a lot in it that kind of rubs me the wrong way, but there's also a lot of things that are like really fun. Ultimately, I think it's held up by its great art direction. So the original Catherine, I would definitely place in like excellent, because despite its flaws, I do love the game a lot. Also, the puzzles are really fun. I didn't even talk about the puzzles, but the actual core gameplay of it, they are fun. It's a unique type of puzzle that's a lot of fun to play. I keep just saying fun. I have no vocabulary. Did you guys notice? I just always say the same fucking words. But yeah, the puzzles are actually quite unique and fun to play. But so what the full body update was is they updated the graphics, of course. The original was on PS3. Wait, I said PS4 earlier. I meant PS3. So they updated the graphics. They added a bunch of new cutscenes, which is nice. But the main thing is they added a third character, like a third girl option for Vincent. And she's terrible. Like, I really hated her, and the whole story that she brings in the game, to me, she makes the game actively worse. Like, none of the flaws in the narrative are fixed by adding a third person. In fact, it makes the game's story actively worse, I thought. And who she ends up actually being and the way it's handled in the game is just, it's terrible. I really hated it. If I was judging the game based purely on the new stuff in full body, I would place it straight up in bad. Like, it's terrible. But if I'm judging it as a whole, like, the original is still a good game, and like the graphical update is nice, so I would maybe place it here. And I feel like that's maybe being a little too generous. I think the new stuff is just terrible. Like, it's straight up offensive to me, so I'm going to lower it a little bit. If you haven't tried Catherine, I do recommend trying the original. I think it's worth playing. Do not get anywhere close to the full body version. It's bad. And that's all I'll say about that. All right, next we've got Tunic, which released in 2022, another game that we played on the channel that I really enjoyed. This is just a wonderful game. It was actually much different than I expected. I kind of thought it was going to be this little Zelda-like adventure, but it turned out to be a bit more like a Souls game, honestly. But more than anything, it's a real love letter to our childhood, and not just to the games of our childhood, but to what it felt like playing games as a kid, you know? If, like me, you're from the NES and SNES era, I think this game really spoke to you. And it's all mostly because of this wonderful little gimmick of collecting pages to an instruction book that's in like this fictional language and having to kind of figure out what it means by yourself. And this is a game for which I took notes and tried to figure things out, and that was so much fun. It's got a very lovely soundtrack, some quite challenging gameplay. I think it was just the right level of challenge before it got kind of like too frustrating, but without it being too easy. But again, where it really shined was in the secrets. The game has so many little secrets, and it has so many moments that make you go, oh, that's what that means, and like, oh, that's what this was. Trying to solve all the little secrets, especially like the big ones at the end, was very, very satisfying. It's like it took inspiration from all these different like great games and just kind of created its own unique little thing. Tunic is definitely excellent. Where exactly does it fit? Now I'm really wondering if anything is going to go in exceptional, because I think all these games are just amazing, honestly. Did I like Tunic or Papers, Please more? For me, they're 1 and 2. It's kind of hard to decide. I think they're both amazing. I think I might place Tunic just a tiny little bit ahead. Again, it's really hard to compare some of these, so don't take the rankings too seriously. Especially, I think everything in Excellent, they're all kind of like equal, and then the other ones, I guess, are more ranked. All right, next we've got the big one, Subnautica, released in 2018. So most likely, if you're watching this video, there's a pretty good chance you found the channel because of Subnautica, because it really was my first playthrough that kind of really gave me a huge boost in viewership. So that makes it a little bit hard for me to judge the game purely on my experience with it and not with what the playthrough kind of represents for me, you know? And that's kind of true of most games that I've played on the channel. It's hard for me to detach myself from the Let's Play itself and think about only just the game. Like, what if I played this game by myself? How would I feel about it compared to how I feel about it because I got to share it with you guys, if that makes sense? Because, you know, Subnautica brought a lot of new eyes to the channel, which I was very thankful for, but because it kind of popped off and brought a lot of new people, it also brought kind of a bit more negativity, which is not because of the game itself. I think it's just the natural thing that happens once you get more people seeing your stuff, is you'll get a bunch new, more positive comments. You also start getting more of these negative comments, and it's still only a very small minority, but like, you know, these negative comments, they do kind of stick with you. And I did get quite a bit on Subnautica. A lot of backseating in those comments. Some videos I would post, it would just be like, oops, all backseat. So, but if I'm thinking about just the game itself, I think it's really good. My nose looks so fucking red. I look like a reindeer for Christmas. I think maybe I'm about to catch a cold or something. Subnautica I thought was great. It's a great execution of the concept of being stranded on an ocean planet. Like, I don't think you could really do it any better than they did. I was a little bit apprehensive about the survival aspects before starting the game, but really they were never a problem. The gathering the resources and crafting and building, they all made it very intuitive and very easy. It's all very streamlined. And it also had a lot of surprises. Like I wasn't expecting the alien facilities. I wasn't expecting there to be so much story to it. There's a great feeling of freedom and a great sense of progression. When you finally get that really good upgrade that makes your life a little easier, it's very satisfying. And I did like that so much of the game revolved around scanning things, which is one of the things I love to do in games. Like when you get to scan things and learn about the world, you get to scan all the creatures, all the plants, and kind of learn about this ecosystem and how it all works together. For me, there was a lot of fun. It was quite a bit scary at times. It's mostly just the fear of the unknown, you know? There's something about being in the ocean and not knowing what you're gonna run into that's kind of scary, but it wasn't that bad ultimately. It is hard for me to judge it like in a bubble, no pun intended. If I think about it outside of the Let's Play, like if I just played it by myself, how would I feel about it? I think I would still think it's excellent. I do love Katamari more than Subnautica, and maybe this is like shocking to you. I don't know if this is a controversial opinion, but I just love Katamari so much. I do think Subnautica is excellent, but I did like these other games just a little bit more. So next we've got Persona 3 Reload, which of course is the remake for the original Persona 3 on PS2. This one came out in, I think this is actually the first game in this list that came out in 2024. So game of the year so far in this list. So I am a huge Persona fan. I'm not quite big enough of a fan where I played the first and second one. I've only played 3, 4, and 5, which I think is like most modern Persona fans. I think each of them have kind of their strengths and weaknesses, but the franchise is very strong as a whole. Like 5 has the amazing presentation, 4 has a bit of a stronger overall narrative, I think. 3, I thought, had one of the strongest overall casts. The music in all of them is fucking amazing. Like each of them has a bit of a different sound and identity, but like they're all amazing soundtracks. But when it comes to Persona 3, it's definitely the one that was most in need of a remake because it does kind of show its age in the dungeon design. And like out of them all, of course, it's the most dated visually because it was the first one on PS2. And the visual overhaul and upgrade they did to it is amazing. It looks so flashy now, so stylish. All the menus look great. The new character models are great. The battles are much more of a spectacle to look at now. Some people will argue that a little bit of that early 2000s kind of more grounded vibe was kind of lost, and I could see it, but to me I really love the changes, especially all the quality of life changes. The battles are much more interesting now. You get more different abilities to play with, and they also added some like social links and interactions with some characters to kind of expand on some of the relationships. It would be the definitive version of Persona 3 if only they had included the female protagonist, which I really don't understand why they didn't from the PSP version. It would have been the perfect occasion to just put everything in one version of the game. I don't know why they didn't. She's not even a DLC. So that was really disappointing, I thought. They also did not include, at least originally, The Answer, which came as like an expansion later, so could have been in the original, you know? I get they want to sell more expansions and more DLC, but like... this is the remake. You could have just put everything in one place, you know? So this is another kind of tricky one. Like, do I judge it based on the original? Do I judge it based on what the remake added, or like just the overall experience? I thought it was really excellent. I think it's a great game. It reminded me how much I loved the original Persona 3. It also makes me very hopeful that we're gonna see a Persona 4 remake, which I think would be awesome. And I think it's definitely going to happen now because I'm sure this one sold quite a bit. Where do I place Persona 3 Reload? Don't hate me, please. Don't get mad at me, but I think I enjoyed it a little bit more than Subnautica even. Hell, maybe even a little bit more than Katamari. Persona 3 Reload was really good. But that's just because the original Persona 3 is so good, you know? Again, these are all kind of equals, to be honest. So next we've got Helldivers 2, another game that came out this year. It's a bit harder to consider it a game that I've completed because it's not really a game you complete so much. I mean, I guess if you unlock all the things, which I haven't done, but I figured I've experienced and played enough of it to be able to say that, like, you know, I've finished it. I haven't really unlocked that much because honestly I'm kind of bad at it, and I don't really have many friends that play the game, so I didn't get a chance to play it that much. It's really hard for me to kind of get a full group together because I don't have any friends. At least not friends that play a lot of games online with me, so I think it's a great concept. I think you get a great value for the price, like it's not a full price game and yet you get so much content in it. It's really fun to jump into these missions and co-op and help each other, and I love that you need to kind of do the input for the different, what do they call them? The different abilities. You need to kind of remember the combinations, which is kind of old school and I like. It's very arcadey. There's a good diversity in the mission types and the enemies. Of course, originally there was only the 2 factions, but I think they're adding a 3rd faction now, so I'll have to jump into it to check out the new stuff. As far as I know, there's no like monetization. There's like an in-game battle pass, but it's not one you need to buy with real money. I think it all happens in the game itself without having to spend extra money, which is very important to me. Lots of customization, although I'm not a huge fan of the armors that are available in the game. I don't think any of them really looks that good, but that's just a me thing. Maybe in the future they'll add some more stuff. For me personally, I found it like a little too punishing, and maybe it's because I was joining people that were playing on very high difficulties and like I would just die instantly every like 30 seconds. I'm sure a lot of people are happy that these higher difficulties exist. For me, I found it a little bit, it made it a little bit difficult for me to enjoy the game at times. I do think it's a really amazing game, but it's not necessarily my style of game that much, if that makes sense. So I think it's like an excellent game, but if I judge how much fun I had with it compared to some of these other games, I would maybe bring it down like a little bit. Well, You're probably noticing I'm like judging all these games based on different criterias, and you're right. Because they're all of such different styles, you know? It's a lot easier, I think, to compare things like movies than games, because games vary in style so much compared to movies, which are all more or less the same. At least the same format, you know? When I did manage to get a group together and we were rolling and having fun with it, it was a lot of fun. So I think this is a good spot for it, for now at least. Next, we've got Strider, specifically the Strider that came out in 2014. So I haven't played any of the other Strider games, but it's just kind of this short, very arcadey Metroidvania. It's got very good game feel, very smooth movement and combat. You can like jump around, move around very quickly. It's all very satisfying. I keep saying satisfying also, god damn it. It's quite fast-paced. I think it's kind of meant for speedruns. However, all the areas do kind of look the same. They're all kind of like these dull metal environments with not much variety. And for me, the big problem was there's no fast travel at all. And the areas are like quite complex to get through. So let's say you want to go back all the way across the map because you forgot a collectible. You would need to just like go around and go through all these complex layouts just to go back and get something. And so it killed my desire to grab the remaining collectibles. Once I finished the game, I was like, all right, I'm done. That's it. Because, you know, even Bloodstained had some fast travel that made it easier to go back and grab any stuff you missed. So I think Strider... Strider is all right. You know, I played it, I finished it, I never really thought about it again ever since. So, you know, I think that's a good spot for it. Next, we've got Borderlands 2, which came out in 2012. Now, all the games so far on this list are games that I completed for the first time this year. Borderlands 2 I've completed multiple times in the past. This was just my latest replay of it. Every few years, me and my friend Audrey, we just have to go through Borderlands 2 again because it was one of the first games that we played together. And so it's very special for us. We forged a lot of memories with it. I do have a bit of a weird relationship with Borderlands as a franchise because 2 was the first one I played, and then I went back and played all the other ones. And we had so much fun playing this game in co-op together, and we really got into the story and the lore even. I think the gameplay loop of it, of just killing these enemies, getting this loot, and like upgrading your character is really good. It is starting to show its age a little bit now, especially the menus And like some of the humor is like a little bit dated, and I know Borderlands is more known for kind of like its toilet humor and stuff, but if you look behind that, the main story and lore in 2 is really good. It's held up by an amazing antagonist in Handsome Jack, which I think is one of the best villains in any game. He's just very memorable, he's got some great lines, he antagonizes you through the whole game. Like, you love to hate him because he's very funny. I love Jack as a villain, and I think he really brings this game up. In fact, for a long time, all the Borderlands fans were like, oh, you should bring back Jack, like that's when the series what it's best. And like, yes, it's true, but you should leave Jack dead. I don't think you should try and bring him back. Just do something else in the future, you know? Leave Jack in the past, even though he's the best villain. So 2 is excellent. The first one is kind of whatever. It's a lot more serious, like there's not as much story to it. It's almost more like a prototype for the second game. Pre-sequel, I thought was fine. You get to go to space in that one, which was a lot of fun. You get ice weapons and laser guns, and you get to fly around with your jetpack. It does have a bit of a weaker story, but I thought it was okay. And then 3 released, and Borderlands 3 was such a disappointment. Like, the gameplay of it is actually really good, but the story was really bad, and the writing was so bad. The villains were annoying, the jokes did not land. Yeah, Borderlands 3 is not great. And then they made the Tiny Tina Wonderlands, which was also just terrible. So it's been kind of rough being a Borderlands fan in the last few years. They just announced the 4th one, like we saw the first trailer at the Game Awards, and like it does look fairly promising. And maybe that's just because there was not one line of dialogue in the whole trailer, so as long as no one's opening their fucking mouth, Borderlands is pretty good, but we'll see. I hope 4 is good. I could really go for another good Borderlands game, but I don't know, I guess we'll see. But all this to say, Borderlands 2, we play it every few years, we always have fun. There's like so much content now, there's like a bunch of expansions included in the game, a bunch of DLCs. You can really play this for a long time, and like if you play it with friends, it's so much fun. So it's very special for me. I know the game's like a little bit dated now, but I think I would place it this high. I think if you've never played it before and like you just start with the second one, you would have a really good time. And given, maybe that's just my nostalgia or the fact that like I have fond memories with it with my friends, maybe that's what it is. And Gearbox, please don't fuck up Borderlands 4. Please just make a good game again. Thank you. Like, they just need to get better writers. The writing was really the main problem. If they kept the gameplay the same and just evolved it a little bit and then got some actual good writers, it would be a great game, I'm sure. So, alright, next is Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which came out in 2023. It's a lot of fun. It's a very fun kind of classic Mario experience. Like all the Marios, it feels great to control. It's very smooth. It's got some beautiful visuals. What I like about it is that every single stage is built around like a unique mechanic. Could be a unique enemy or a power-up or like just a gimmick. And to me, that's kind of like the sign of a great platformer, and Nintendo are really good about this. It was the same with some of the older Mario games. It was the same in like the Donkey Kong Country games. It is a little bit on the easy side, even compared to other Mario titles. It could have used a bit more challenge, especially near the end. Like, usually the secret bonus levels are really hard. Even the ones in this one were not that hard, except like the one last stage that was actually pretty damn hard. But it also does have multiplayer. However, I think it's the weakest multiplayer of any Mario game because there's no collision between the characters. So because you can't interact with each other, you're all just kind of playing the same game at the same time without actually getting to interact in any meaningful way. So that was kind of a disappointment. It kind of defeats the purpose to me. I ended up just playing it in single player instead. It does get pretty creative with the Wonder mechanic, where like each stage will have like kind of its own wacky mechanic. I think Super Mario Wonder was pretty good. It's better than Power Wash. I did have a bit more fun playing Star Wars with my girlfriend than I had playing Mario Wonder by myself, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Alright, next we've got Metroid Dread, which released in 2021. I wouldn't consider myself a huge Metroid fan. I think the only one I finished was Metroid Prime on the GameCube, which was a really excellent game. But the side-scrolling ones, like the 2D ones, I don't know, there was something about them that I could never really get into. I think there's something about the movement that's always kind of felt wrong to me. And I will say Metroid Dread was a real mixed bag for me. Like, I think the exploration itself was a lot of fun, and I really loved Samus's characterization in the game. Like, she's resourceful, she's brave, she never backs down from anything. So I really loved Samus in this game. But yeah, the main gimmick in Dread was the Emmy sections, the robots that can kill you instantly. And they're definitely filled with tension, that's for sure, because as soon as they touch you, you die. But that can also get a little bit frustrating and repetitive when you get stuck on a section. There's also a lot of these sections through the game, and like, you get more of a feeling of like, ugh, another Emmy, instead of being like, ooh, cool, another Emmy, you know? I also thought, just like Strider, all of the environment kind of looks the same. There's not that much difference between all the biomes, which made it tricky sometimes when you finally get that upgrade you needed, but then you have to go back and you're like, where did I need this again? I can't even remember because everything looks the same. The main problem for me was the controls. Like, there's all these complex kind of input that you need to do for basic things. Like, oh, if you want to shoot diagonally a missile, you need to hold this button, and then this button, and then like this button. None of it really felt intuitive to me, and that includes the worst double jump I've ever seen in any game. Like, to double jump in this game, you need to jump again like at a very kind of specific point of your arc in your jump, and like I would always mess it up, especially in boss battles where you're like fighting this really difficult enemy and you need very precise jumps to avoid the attacks, and I will always mess up and get hit, and that got really frustrating. So this is also another game with no fast travel, and I think that's kind of been the case for all the Metroids, but it never felt as much of a hassle, and like at least not in Metroid Prime, where you could kind of travel through the areas fairly easily. In Metroid Dread, like the areas are pretty huge, and again, they're kind of complex to go through. So the lack of fast travel, again, for me kind of killed my desire to grab all the collectibles. But I don't know, maybe, I guess I'm just not a huge fan of Metroid games. So Metroid Dread, unfortunately, I would place it below Strider. Because at least the controls in Strider were like buttery smooth, super responsive. This is probably a very controversial opinion because I know Metroid fans are very passionate, but I didn't have that much fun playing Metroid Dread. So sorry. Next we've got Telltale's The Walking Dead, which I started I think 2 years ago, but of course I only play like one season at a time, so it was this year that I actually finished it on the channel. I think they actually released between 2012 to 2019, so it was over a very long period of time. This is another one. If you haven't watched my playthrough, I do recommend it, although they are very heavy games to play and even to watch, I think. But the episodic nature made it like a perfect fit for a Let's Play. I thought it had a ton of memorable moments, memorable characters, a really excellent protagonist in Clementine. Like by the end of the final season, you get really attached to her, and I was really invested in what would happen to her. The one downside, and that's kind of true of most Telltale games, is for all of it being built around choices, your choices ultimately don't really matter that much. Like once you start watching other people's playthroughs, you're like, oh, okay, so he did that thing different, but then the same thing kind of happened anyway, so that's a little bit disappointing. But even though the choices may not matter in the moment, they feel like they do, and so I think they do accomplish their purpose in that way. But yeah, it can definitely be very heavy, very depressing at times, sometimes maybe a little too much, but that's just kind of the nature of The Walking Dead in general. So in that way, they're very faithful to the TV show and to the comics, I guess. It's not really a game I could see myself binge because you kind of need a break after a very heavy episode, you know? The writing could be a little bit uneven. I think it's because they released it on such a long period of time and there seems to have been a bit of a troubled development also behind this one. But it was nice to see the updated graphics and like the game kept getting better visually through the seasons, which was fun. Overall, I did really enjoy my time with it. I would probably never replay it, but when I was playing it, I was invested. So this is one that's really hard to rank, because like I did get really invested in the story itself. However, like there's not that much gameplay in The Walking Dead, you know, you're mostly watching like an interactive TV show pretty much. because you can't just judge it based on like how much fun did I have, because sometimes it wasn't that much fun. It was kind of a chore to get through, but I did get so invested in these characters. Like it had me cry a few times. Like there's something to say about that, you know? Because like, I probably got the most invested in this story out of like any of these, pretty much. But it was so painful at time, and like there's not that much gameplay to it, so it's really hard to compare such a narrative-heavy game like this to something like Helldivers that has like basically no story. It is kind of a very uneven package, so yeah, it's really hard to judge. Saying The Walking Dead is pretty good, being a little too hard on it. Should it go up in excellent? It is a little bit rough around the edges. I think I'm gonna put it there. I find it's a very difficult game to judge for me. Somewhere around there. Because like I played it over such a long period of time, you know? And like it sits at such a weird place between narrative and gameplay, where like it skews way more on one than the other, so I think this is kind of an okay spot for it. Alright, next we've got Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, which came out in 2020. I can't actually remember when I finished this one. I know it was much earlier this year. Like a lot of people, I was kind of surprised when they announced a warrior-style Zelda game, but it was kind of a perfect fit, honestly. You get all these different characters and all these different enemies, and you know, they're not games that are meant to be taken that seriously. They're just games where like you mindlessly whack at a bunch of enemies pour se défouler, as we say in Quebec. The original Hyrule Warriors was okay, but they actually took this one a lot more seriously with the Breath of the Wild coat of paint, and you could tell they were trying to tell a more substantial story and like expand on what was introduced in Breath of the Wild. It can actually get pretty heavy sometimes, the story. But yeah, the Zelda paint job is very effective. Like it's exactly the same visual style, it's the same sound effects, the menus, like everything is exactly the same as in Breath of the Wild. It just plays like a Dynasty Warriors game. So like all of these, it can get repetitive pretty quickly. They really work better in short sessions. Hyrule Warriors was pretty good. I think here is a pretty good spot for it, I guess. All right, we're only halfway done with this. So next we've got Detroit Become Human, another game played on the channel. This one came out in 2018. We were just speaking about narrative versus gameplay, and this is one that's almost all narrative. But I think it's a very strong narrative. It's a lot more consistent than something like The Walking Dead, because of course it's like a single game. I really enjoyed the subject matter of these androids, and I think they actually did a pretty good job of like tackling the issue and exploring the different aspects of it. And it really had me thinking about the concepts of, you know, artificial intelligence and these androids and like what role they would play in society, and like they do take it seriously. Some of its storytelling is not exactly subtle, like it does tend to be quite on the nose, but you do get invested. I love that you get different protagonists, and in this one what I appreciate was the choices actually did matter quite a bit. There's a lot of different ways the game can go. They even show it to you with the I forget what it's called, the flow chart. They do show you the flow chart, and like there's so many different ways the events can go, so I like that. And it's also very impressive visually, the character expressions, and like I think it was all mocapped, so I really enjoyed my time with Detroit. You could argue that The Walking Dead walked so Detroit could run. That's probably true. I like Detroit quite a bit. I mean, it is pretty light on gameplay, but it told a story that I really enjoyed, so I think it can go above. I mean, of course, Katamari is a lot more fun to play, but Detroit, I was quite invested in. Should it go even higher? Let me think about this. I mean, ultimately, I do think I'm more attached to Borderlands 2 than Detroit, but Detroit was really strong. And also, you'll notice this starts my streak of D games that I played this year. For some reason, I played so many D games this year. I played Detroit, Dredge, Duck Detective, Dave the Diver, Death's Door, Disco Elysium. Like, so many D games. And at some point, I was kind of doing it on purpose just to keep the joke running. But for the first few, it was just kind of a coincidence, which I thought was pretty funny. So the next game is Dredge, which came out in 2023. Dredge was really just a fun, nice, little simple game. Like, there wasn't anything too complex about it. It was a pretty chill game. Like, looking back, it was a strange game to play on the channel. Like, it was one that a bunch of people were asking me to play. And after playing, I was like, I'm not really sure why people wanted to see that, because I found it fun, but like, it doesn't really have that kind of a second-hand viewing enjoyment, you know, that's something like narrative heavy like Detroit would have, or like something kind of like a challenging Souls game would have, you know. I enjoyed Dredge. I thought it was a neat little game with some fun music. The fishing was kind of relaxing despite the horrors coming after you on the ocean all the time. Some nice little creepy fish and a little bit of Lovecraftian horror below everything. Dredge was pretty good. It's really one of these like one and done, like you get all the fish, you do everything there is to do, you have a nice time doing it, and then you probably never really play it again, you know? I am a big fan of like nautical themes and like sailor stuff, especially when it gets kind of creepy and like horror vibes. I just felt there wasn't really that much to it, you know? The gameplay was very simple, the story was pretty simple. It was just a nice little game. But Dredge is also quite unique. Like, there's not a lot of fishing games that are horror themed. So I think that's a good spot for it. Next, we've got Triangle Strategy, which came out in 2022. This was a bit of a surprise for me. It's one that I remember playing the demo on Switch, and I was like, oh, this seems pretty fun. I could get into it. And then when I played the full version, I actually got quite a lot into it. I am a big fan of these tactics style game in the style of the old Final Fantasy Tactics. This game is just straight up like Final Fantasy Tactics meets the story of Game of Thrones meets the style of like Octopath Traveler. That's basically exactly what it is. And so for that, I loved it. The story was actually pretty interesting. Like, it takes itself kind of very seriously, and it's all about just politics and these different factions and these alliances and wars going on. And you do actually have like a few different paths you can take, which is cool. And there's a neat little system where you need to get your advisors to all vote, and then you can kind of influence their opinion, but ultimately it's up to the vote of like everyone on your council, which I thought was an interesting mechanic. I thought the challenge was just right. There's a bunch of different classes and characters, and like you can kind of build them the way you want. And I got pretty invested in its story, so I had a lot of fun with Triangle Strategy, even though it's a terrible name for a game. Triangle Strategy... No, it's hard because like these games, you know, I bring them up and then they get faced with Walking Dead, and like I had such a strong emotional reaction to Walking Dead that it's hard to have games jump over it, even though I might have had more fun with them, you know? And again, of course, this is a personal list, you know? Like here, I'm not saying that Borderlands 2 is a better game than Metroid Dread, you know? That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying just my own personal enjoyment. So personally, I had more fun with Triangle Strategy than I did with like Helldivers, so I think this is a good spot. I think Subnautica overall, I did have a more fulfilling experience than I did with Triangle Strategy, but I still thought it was an excellent game. If you're a fan of tactics games, I recommend Triangle Strategy. Next, we've got Duck Detective: The Secret Salami, which I played on my birthday because I love detectives, I love ducks, and this is just kind of a simple little detective game. It's like a very, very simple version of The Case of the Golden Idol, pretty much. This is a very small, very short game. It only lasts about maybe 2 hours, and so I don't want to judge it too harshly because for what it is, it's fun. You're a duck being a detective, so obviously the story, again, doesn't really take itself very seriously. That being said, the mystery is not all that intriguing. I think it could have gone with the duck detective thing while still having a bit more compelling mystery to it. Duck Detective was... I mean, it's very, very short. Like you finish it in one sitting, and it wasn't very challenging or anything. So I think this is a good spot for it. And it's not because I didn't enjoy it. Like there's nothing really wrong with it. There just wasn't really that much that kind of... There just wasn't really anything that amazing about it either, you know? And it's very short, so... I feel like I'm being too harsh on it. But it's just... It is what it is, you know? Next we've got Dave the Diver, which came out in 2023. This is a really fun game. For me, the main thing about this game is diversity. There's so much diversity in the activities you can do, because you can dive, you can run the restaurant, you can kind of manage your employees. It always surprises you with these new little mini games or mechanics to shake things up. There's a lot to do in this one. It kept me busy for quite a while. It's got a nice chill vibe, a nice little pixelated look, and I had a lot of fun with it. So Dave the Diver... Oh man, it's getting really hard to judge these because they're such different games. Like when I started playing it, I got really addicted to it, and then by the end I kind of trailed off a little bit. When I was playing it, I played a lot of it. It's almost like I would need to do multiple tier lists, you know? A tier list based on gameplay only, a tier list based on story only, you know? Over here, I guess? Please don't take these rankings too seriously. Alright, next we've got Death's Door. This was another one, kind of like short, neat little package, just a lovely little game. This is another one that I played on the channel. I think this was like my least popular playthrough that I did this year on the channel. Almost no one watched it, and to be honest, I don't think there's a lot about it that really appeals to a Let's Play format, but it was a lot of fun for me to play. For me, this was in the vein of Dredge and Tunic, of like these very lovely little packages, just a fun little experience. Again, with just the right level of challenge to it. It's nice and creative, it's got its own little sense of humor, a pretty interesting little world, some very memorable characters that you get to meet, some nice music, and a few little endgame secrets that were fun to collect. Death's Door is like, it's probably around where Dredge was for me. They were very similar experiences, I find. I think I like Death's Door a little bit more. Like, to be honest, I feel like I had more fun playing Death's Door than Helldivers, but like, I'm trying to rank these based on so many different criterias, you know? I really just wanted an excuse to talk about the games I played with you guys more than I wanted to actually rank these, because the ranking part is really difficult. Around there. Oh, next we've got Disco Elysium, which came out in 2019, another game that I played on the channel. And oh man, this was a game that my girlfriend was begging me to play for the longest time because she'd played it and she really liked it. And after playing it, I can definitely see why she wanted me to play it. I can see why people think it's so special. Straight up, this is probably the game with the best writing that I've seen. It's very, very unique. It's almost like a Baldur's Gate without the combat, pretty much. It's like a D&D game where you only use dialogue, but like the dialogue is so good, so rich. The characters you meet are so creative, unique, realistic, believable, memorable. I'm running out of words. The world they created, like when this game came out, I remember sometimes seeing it on the Steam page and just thinking it was like a generic kind of detective game that took place in the real world. But the fact they created their own world, and it's such an interesting one with like its own complex history and like its weird kind of sci-fi aspects of like the Pale and all this weird shit. I loved it so much. It's got emotional moments, it's got really funny moments. You can make your own choices and like build your own character and kind of take it in a few different directions. I mean, most of the narrative stays the same no matter what, but there is still quite a lot of freedom. And like the art direction, like the portraits, the amazing art from the artists, and like the strange music that really complements the moments you go through. A very affecting story for me. This is a really special game, and I will say this is a game that goes all the way in exceptional for me. I think this might be the best game I've played this year. It was that good. And I think it probably showed in my Let's Play how into it I was. That's because I really love this game. Next, we've got Mega Man 11. Now, Mega Man 1, the first game on NES, is actually the first game I ever played in my life. So I grew up on Mega Man. I played all the games on NES and all the ones on SNES and all the X games. I think I probably played pretty much every Mega Man game that exists. So I have a lot of history with Mega Man. I'm very attached to it as a franchise. And when I was a kid, I really grew up on these platformers. So I had to check out 11, and it is a very competent, very polished sequel. It's kind of like the first true sequel. It feels like an evolution of the concept, because after 8 on PlayStation, they did, I think, 9 and 10 as little retro 8-bit games. And then in 11, it's actually like 3D, even though it's still a platformer, but it feels like an evolution. And I had fun with it. I do realize that maybe as I'm getting older, I'm losing a little bit of my patience for these very punishing types of platformers, because I don't know, it's just a format of games we don't really get anymore. You know, the punishing platformer where if you fail the stage, you go back to the very beginning of the stage, and if you run out of lives, it's game over. Because nowadays, when you think of challenging, you think, oh, you know, the Dark Souls games and things like that, but back in the day, challenging meant if you fail, you go back to the beginning. And you need a lot of patience to tackle challenges like that. And I think I'm starting to get a little too old for this. So when I met a wall in Mega Man 11, I was like, do I really want to keep bashing my head against the wall? So I would just like come back to it a little bit later. And the last few stages are insanely difficult. Like the fucking yellow devil fight in this game. I think the yellow devil fight in this game is like the hardest thing I've done all year. It's so difficult. I mean, it's classic Mega Man gameplay with a few new gimmicks, so I can't really fault it. It's very faithful to what the series was. Oh man, I don't want it to be behind Catherine full body, but I think maybe over here. I think I still like the old classic Mega Man a little bit more, you know, just because the series has really cooled down in recent years and decades, really, but I still have a soft spot for the Blue Bomber, you know? Next is The Case of the Golden Idol, which released in 2022. Another game that we played on the channel. After playing Return of the Obra Dinn, I was like, you know, are there any other games kind of in this style? Because I would love to try them out. And a lot of people were telling me, well, you should try The Case of the Golden Idol. And it's not exactly like Return of the Obra Dinn, they're kind of different, but it was a lot of fun still. You get presented with like this little moment in time with all the different players and the different things, and then you have to look at the different clues to gather some words and kind of complete these sentences to figure out what the mysteries are. And it was quite satisfying, and don't call it satisfying. It was fulfilling. I'm gonna need to whip out my fucking thesaurus. Golden Idol is good, and I look forward to playing the new one that came out. I haven't had a chance to do it yet, but I probably will. Case of the Golden Idol. They got these little songs that will like get stuck in your head. I love these little eureka moments you get when you finally understand something, but it's also a fairly short game. Does it go all the way to exit? Maybe I've been a little harsh on Mario Wonder. I feel like I've been too harsh on a bunch of these, but like they're all good, you know? I haven't put anything in bad. At worst, they're all right, which is still, you know, it's an all right game. So I still feel like I'm being too harsh on a bunch of these, but it's just the competition is very hard. All of these games are so good. So Case of the Golden Idol. I can hear the boos coming from the audience every time I put a game above Subnautica. I think I would place it this high. I had a lot of fun with Golden Idol. I need to pick up the pace because I still have a lot of these to go. So next we have Little Nightmares, which we played on Halloween quite recently. Little Nightmares to me All of these kind of like a bit shorter, condensed adventures, they feel a little bit similar, not in their gameplay style, but just in the experience I had where like I play it, I had some fun with it, and then you're done, you know? You don't really think twice about it. It doesn't do anything that kind of revolutionary, but everything it does it competently, and it does it well. Little Nightmares got a great art direction. It has an intriguing world that kind of makes you want to learn more about it. It's pretty good. I feel like you guys are gonna hate me the longer this list goes on. I think around here? I'm probably going to move some of these around a little bit later, so. Next, we've got Final Fantasy X. Which, no, it's not a game that I just played for the first time. I played this game when it came out all the way back in 2001, but I did happen to replay it this year. Not only did I replay it, I watched my friend Audrey play it from beginning to end, and I think I watched 2 or 3 other full Let's Plays on YouTube because, you know, as soon as you watch one video, YouTube just keeps recommending you more. But I watched 2 full Final Fantasy playthroughs, and it made me want to replay it again, so I got the version on PC and I got through it again. And this is going to be a bit of an unfair ranking because Final Fantasy X is one of my favorite games of all time. Like, it's probably in my top 10 games ever. It's my favorite Final Fantasy. I think the soundtrack is a fucking all-timer. It's probably the best in the franchise. I will still cry on command. Like, if you need me to cry, I can just pull up the ending video for that game, and even though I've seen it 4 times just this year, and I cried every single time, to tell you how much it still gets to me. So, like, as soon as the music hits and I can see the cutscene in my head and like my eyes start fucking like burning, you know? I mean, I don't think I really need to sing its praises to you. You've probably played it. If you haven't, please play Final Fantasy X. That has to shoot straight to the top for me. I mean, there's a lot of nostalgia to it, obviously. It's one of the great questions, you know? If I was to play this game today, what would I feel about it? I think about this kind of stuff all the time. Like, think about your favorite, most nostalgic game that you've loved ever since you've been a kid. What if you were to play it now for the first time? How would you feel about it? It's a little hard to tell, you know? Because in many ways, they kind of forge your preferences. They forge who you are as a gamer. I like to think that if I had played it for the first time now, it would still really grip me. Maybe not as much as it did when I was a teenager, but I still think it's an exceptional game. The combat system is the best in the series to me. I love the turn-based. It's got some of the best characters. Yuna is one of the best characters of all time. And I will die on that hill and then she will send me. Yeah, I think that's all I can say about Final Fantasy X. The next game in the list is Dome Keeper, which I only finished kind of recently. I mean, obviously I'm doing these in order, but I think I just got this one in the bundle and I was like, oh, I'll check it out. And I actually ended up playing a lot of it. I think I finished it within a week. Like, I played so much of it in a very short time because, I don't know, it was very addictive. It's just a little game where you mine underground to grab some resources. And then after a certain amount of time, you need to go back to the surface to defend against monsters on the surface. And so it's like part mining resources and then part tower defense. And that little gameplay loop I found very fun. It's got a nice kind of simple pixel art style. There's a lot of different modifiers you can do for your run. So you can do a run where the rock is very hard, but there's a lot of resources, or like a run where you get little drones that help you collect things, or there's all these different modifiers. There's already a lot of content in the game, but I do wish there were a few more characters. There's only 2 different characters, so they could have had a few different ones, which would have been nice. So I played it, I got all the achievements in like a week, and then I was done with it, so I had a lot of fun with Dome Keeper. I like Dome Keeper a whole lot. I think I would place it quite high. Like, it's a very simple game, you know, it doesn't have a story or anything, but just the simple mechanics of it for me were very enjoyable, so I would place Dome Keeper quite high. Next is The Wolf Among Us, which we also played on the channel. It's another Telltale game. It's very similar to The Walking Dead, except it's much shorter, of course. There's only 1 season of The Wolf Among Us versus 4 seasons of The Walking Dead. It does have a unique art style that I liked, some pretty nice music. I was a bit critical of the narrative when I played it. I think it was good overall, but I felt so lost at so many moments about just the world they live in, which is so strange. Like, it's a story about fairy tale characters that live in modern day New York, so of course it's gonna be kind of weird. Sometimes I really felt like I wasn't given all the information necessary for me to make informed choices, and so that part I didn't like as much, but I did enjoy it overall. I think The Wolf Among Us is pretty good. I would place it maybe here. I do like The Walking Dead more, even though the writing is more inconsistent in The Walking Dead. Its strong moments are much stronger. So next we've got Subnautica Below Zero, which we just finished quite recently. So I've already shared my thoughts about this one in the playthrough itself. It's just more Subnautica. Obviously, it's a bit more story heavy. You get more cutscenes, more dialogue between the characters. You have a voiced character this time. The world is much smaller than the original Subnautica. To me, it's really just more of an expansion. Like, it's hard to judge it as a full game, even though I know it's sold as a standalone game, but it really does just feel like an expansion you're supposed to play after Subnautica and like take it for what it is. But all the new stuff I really liked. I like the new creatures, I like the new tools, I really love the sea truck, the new vehicle that you get. The story is pretty weak, though. There's a lot of holes in the story, and like you could tell it was rewritten, and so like some of it I actually kind of like a little bit more than Subnautica, and then some of it I like not as much. So like it doesn't have that strong impact than that playing Subnautica for the first time has. You know, when you first play it, it's kind of all new to you, and like but it was still pretty good. It's like I feel like I want to place it lower than these because I kind of had more fun with these games, but like there's nothing really that bad about Below Zero either. I did like it more than Mega Man 11. And again, it's hard for me to kind of detach myself from the Let's Play itself and like kind of what the reception was, the kind of comments that I got on it. I also got a lot of backseating on Below Zero, which was a little bit annoying. I kind of just want to put them like side to side because the experience is very similar, but of course it's a lot stronger in the original. And I don't think there's really anything that wrong with Below Zero. It just wasn't as memorable, you know? Next is Princess Peach Showtime, which released this year in 2024, and it was about time that we got a good Princess Peach game because the one on 3DS, I think it's better if we don't really talk too much about it. It's a first-party Nintendo game, so as you can expect, it's very polished. It's very colorful. It's got simple but intuitive gameplay. I really love all the different costumes that Peach can get. They're all very cute. It is a bit of what I like to call a Goo Goo Gaga game. As in, it is very, very easy. You can tell it's kind of made for children. So the game kind of feels like it's playing itself at times. Like there's really not much challenge to it at all. You can get through every stage very, very, very easily. Even more so than something like the Kirby games. You know, the Kirby games, they're quite easy, but they have a little bit of challenge sometimes when you get near the end. You know, this one is just very easy the whole way through. Like you get a bit more challenge if you're trying to get all the collectibles, but it's still nothing much. Princess Peach. But even though it's easy, it was still fun. I would say it's pretty good, maybe. I would place it around there. Next, we've got Dungeons of Hinterberg, also from 2024. This was a really fun one. You get a little bit of mix of a social sim like Persona and then some kind of Zelda-like puzzles and dungeons in the day. I'm always a fan of kind of these Zelda-type dungeons and puzzles, and they're done very well here. There's a nice diversity of gameplay styles. And again, just the right level of challenge, some kind of basic combat in there. It's got a nice, pretty unique visual style, some nice music, and I actually really like the writing of it. Like the conversations between the characters, they feel very natural for the most part, save for maybe like a few a few parts there and there, but the subject matter and kind of like how it talks about the feelings of going on vacation and like feeling kind of like needing to get away from your life and being tired of like your work and wanting to meet new people, and like all these kind of subject matters are tackled quite well, I think, in the dialogue. I think it maybe overstays its welcome just a little bit, because like you do need to kind of grind a few additional days than you would need for the dungeons to get the relationships to progress. So I did feel like it was dragging just a little bit at the end, but I had a lot of fun with it. Dungeons of Hinterberg. I think I would place it around here. Next, we've got Lego Batman, the video game from 2008. I'm playing this one with my girlfriend right now. I'm counting it as completed because we did every stage, but we're still kind of getting all the collectibles, which we like to do in the Lego games. It's more Lego, so it's a lot of fun, but you can tell it's kind of like one of the older ones. It's quite rough around the edges, so to speak. The vehicle stages especially kind of control a little weird. They're not particularly good. And like most of the gameplay doesn't really have anything to do with Batman at all, which is kind of true of all these Lego games, but in some of them you can tell they make more of an effort to include the franchise and the gameplay style. In this one, not so much. Lego Batman was alright. I swear I did not hate A Little to the Left. Like, it happens to be last, but I liked it just fine. Like, again, these are all alright games. None of these I think are bad games. I just kind of happen to like this one the least. Also, I was playing the Batman with my girlfriend, so of course that makes it a bit more fun. But yeah, I think that's a good place for it. Next, we've got Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, which I'm cheating a little bit for this one. I actually haven't finished it just yet, but I am in like the final dungeon. So by the end of December, I'm definitely going to be done with it. So that's why I'm including it. I really like this one. I actually liked it more than I thought I would. Like, when I saw the trailer for it, I was like, oh, it's cool that you're finally giving us a playable Zelda, even though it's in kind of the simpler style. And I thought the concept of like, okay, you're collecting these different objects and monsters and you get to use them. That sounds kind of fun. Upon playing it though, it actually kind of like came together a little bit more, and the game is a lot of fun. You can kind of tackle these challenges in many different ways depending on the object that you use. It's got a very cute, adorable art style, just like in Link's Awakening. Some pretty nice music also. It's a very simple kind of story that we've seen before. Like, there's not any like memorable character or any strong story moment. It's all kind of basic stuff. But the world is cute and the gameplay is pretty fun, so that holds it up. I think I put Helldivers too high. I didn't actually play that much Helldivers this year. Do I like Zelda more than Dave the Diver? I'm really liking this Zelda game. Over here, maybe? I'm really liking it. I know I'm repeating myself, but some of these feel very wrong because there's such different styles of games. Like, what do you mean Power Wash is better than Metroid Dread? I don't know. I would need to do like different rankings, you know? Anyways, let's move on. So that's it for all the games that I completed this year. I've got a few extra ones which I kept separate for a few different reasons. First of all is Hades 2. Of course, Hades 2 is not released yet. This is only the early access, but I played so much Hades 2 this year. Like, I did pretty much everything there is to do in the early access, which is a lot of content. I think the early access of Hades 2 right now has like twice the amount of content that was in the original Hades. So there's a lot to do, and it's just more of the same. It doesn't really do anything that different from the first Hades, but the first Hades is phenomenal. So I cannot wait for the full release. And as for what I've played so far, it's really, really, really excellent. I think it's all the way up there. Hades is just an amazing game, and the second one is just as good, if not better than the first one, because there's even more to do in this one. For me, it did to roguelite games what Hollow Knight did for Metroidvanias. Like, it pushed the ceiling even higher for what these types of games can do. It kind of revived the genre, I feel. Next, we've got Zenless Zone Zero. which I have here because it's not really a game you can complete. And I am a little bit ashamed to even say that I played this game. Like when Genshin Impact came out years ago, I did play quite a bit of it because we were just out of Breath of the Wild. You know, I was like, oh, I could go for some more open world exploration. Like some of the character designs were kind of fun. But then, you know, Genshin Impact just kept expanding again and again, like getting bigger. And it was like, oh, all right, this is too much. Like, I'm done with this gacha shit. And I never spent a single dollar, I want to say. I hate the gacha games. I hate the fucking monetization system. I think it's super predatory. It makes for just, ugh. But then they came out with Zenless Zone Zero this year, and it was like, okay, this is more like an urban setting. You know, it's got a much more in-depth combat system, and the combat does feel really good. And some of the characters, you know, they are cool, and I like the environment and the music. I love this urban vibe. I just wish it wasn't a gacha game. You know, if they just released a $60 game that was with these characters in this world, and it was like a story you can play from beginning to end, it would be a pretty great game. But of course, they don't want to do that because they're making a bajillion dollars with these fucking gacha games. So, like, I've played some of it and I've kind of fallen out of it already. Like, I played it when it first released, I got a few characters and I've already kind of lost interest because it just keeps going forever. So, I would say it's like pretty good. Like, I don't know how high I can really place it, you know? If we're going just with the game model it's bad. Like, this is just bad. Gacha games should not exist. I hate that. But if you're going from what is actually on offer, it's like, well, some pretty fun combat, some fun kind of city exploration, but it's so limited because of its gacha nature. So, like, the highest I can put it is like, it's pretty good, I guess. And even that feels like it's kind of too generous for what it is. So anyways, the next game is UFO 50. And the reason why I'm having it kind of separate from the others is because this is a compilation of 50 NES-style games. And so I can't really say I've completed it because they're all extremely difficult games. So like I've completed a few of them. I probably will never finish all of them, but like I feel like I've played enough of it to be able to say, well, I've kind of seen everything that's on offer in UFO 50, you know? But a lot of them are very, very challenging, so... But this game is amazing. You get a crazy value for the price it is. They really are like 50 fully fledged games. Like some of them could be full releases because there's an insane variety of playstyles. Like there's a deck builder, there's a full RPG in there, there's a bunch of platformers, some shoot 'em ups, some puzzle games. Like there's like an idol game, there's like a racing game, there's a dungeon crawler. The variety is insane, and like there's a few duds in there. I'm looking at you, fucking Onion Delivery, but so a lot of really fun games, insane value for the price it is. There are like a few duds in there, but overall it's a super strong package. I think it's one of the games of the year, honestly. I was surprised it wasn't like nominated for more prizes. I guess it's because it's kind of an obscure game, but I highly recommend you check it out. UFO 50. I played a whole bunch of it this year. It's really strong. I think I would place it at least this high, just as an overall package. And then the last game on the list is Game of the Year nominee Balatro, which I just kind of recently bought like around the Game Awards because I was like, all right, let's check out this game that everyone's talking about, which I'm sure a lot of other people did as well. And this is another one that's kind of hard to say that you've completed because it's just kind of this card game you can play forever. But 3 days after buying it, I played it for 23 hours. So I think we can say it's pretty good. It's a highly polished roguelike deck builder. And what else can you say? But it's extremely addictive. In fact, thank God this isn't like an actual gambling game or like a free-to-play game where you need to spend real money, because this would be a nightmare. People would spend so much money on it because it really is super addictive. But as a game you can just buy for like 10 bucks, just play as much as you want. It is so much fun. There's so many different combinations you can do. I was a bit scared that because I don't know anything about poker that I wouldn't really understand it or have fun, but no, they make it very simple. It's all explained to you. So Balatro, very, very strong game. It's very hard to compare to these other games. It's just a card game. So It doesn't have the super strong narrative of a Detroit. It doesn't have like the epic world of a Zelda or the stylish visuals of a Persona 3, but like it's really, really addictive for what it is. So I think I would place it maybe there. This is all the games I played this year. This video is probably gonna be hours long. Let me take one last look at this. Some of these do feel wrong. Let me take a second look through that. So, Final 10, that's unfair. That's just one of my favorite games ever. Disco Elysium, incredible. Hades 2, incredible. Balatro, incredible. A lot of these would deserve to be pulled up, I think. Like, Tears of the Kingdom, it is an exceptional game. So is Tunic, so is Papers, Please. I think UFO 50, for what it offers, like the expert craftsmanship of some of these games and like the sheer value of 50 different games in one package, you can't just ignore that. So I want to pull this one up too. Persona 3 is also exceptional. Borderlands 2, there's a lot of nostalgia to it. Dome Keeper I brought maybe a little too high. Golden Idols maybe a little too high. I can go behind Subnautica, Triangle Strategy. I did play a whole bunch of that. Triangle Strategy was quite good. I think I would bring this one up even beyond this one. Dave the Diver. You get more diversity in Dave the Diver, but I think Zelda, I'm having a lot of fun with this one. Helldivers. Helldivers is like a great game. I kind of wish I liked it more than I do, and maybe if I had like friends that always wanted to play with me, I would, but because I so rarely get to actually play it with people, that kind of brings it down for me, so I could maybe bring this one down a little bit. The Walking Dead, if we're going on how The Walking Dead resonated with me emotionally, I would put it in... It's so hard to say. You get so attached to Clementine over all these different seasons. I definitely got attached to her more than like the characters from Detroit, but Detroit does have a much stronger narrative. So... And like The Walking Dead is just so painful to play, you know? It's hard to judge something that gives you such negative feelings, but it's a very strong story. So The Walking Dead probably does belong somewhere up here in excellent, but just because, you know, it's a bit rough around the edges, so that keeps it down. Dungeons of Hinterberg I think is an excellent game. You know, Death's Door was excellent also. Just a great game. Mario Wonders is also excellent. Now I'm changing all my ratings right at the end. Mario Wonder, it's a great Mario game. It's super polished. I just kind of finished it in a couple of days and then I was done with it, you know? If there had been a better multiplayer, I think that would bring it further up. Dredge. I mean, for what it's trying to do, Dredge is great. Theater Rhythm, I would love so much more if they just released all the songs in one game, you know? It's a bit hard for me to overlook that aspect, but otherwise, I would bring it up, like... maybe all the way up here. Little Nightmares I liked a lot, there's just not that much to it, you know? Mega Man 11 was nice, but the end was so damn hard that, like, for me, that really brings it down a bit. I just don't have that patience anymore. Catherine, again, if we're talking the original Catherine, I'm bringing it like maybe like around up here. If I'm talking only the full body, I'm going all the way bad. If I'm talking the overall package, it belongs around there, I guess. Princess Peach, fine game, just a bit too easy. Gacha games should not exist. That kind of bad gacha game. Bad. See, that's where you go. Actually, bad full body. Bad. You can go there. Strider was alright. Add some fast travel to Strider and it would go all the way up to like... I think if Strider had some fast travel, I would have liked it even more than Bloodstained, to be honest. I would bring it like... here. Picross. I mean... If we're talking just the Picross puzzles themselves, that's all the way in excellent, because I fucking love Picross, but like, the Nazarick stuff, I didn't really care about. Metroid Dread, some great exploration, some great characterization of Samus, very bad controls, I feel like I've been harsh on A Little to the Left. I swear it's an alright game. If you want to check it out, I do encourage you. It's a very nice kind of little cozy game about a cat just moving stuff around and then you have to replace it. It's just... it didn't leave that strong of an impression on me, I guess. So anyways, as you can see, some of these can really be moved around and like it's not to be taken that seriously anyways. I just wanted to share some thoughts about the games I've played this year with you guys. So I don't even know if anyone's gonna watch this video. It's gonna land on Christmas, so probably not that many people will. But if you did, and if you watched all the way up to here, thank you so much. I hope you had a good time. I would really love to know about what games you played this year, so please leave me a comment below. Tell me maybe, if you don't want to tell me about every game you've played, tell me about your top 3, your top 5. Which games left the strongest impression on you? Is there any of these that maybe you hadn't heard of before that you'd be interested in checking out? If I made you discover a new game or made you intrigued to try one of them, please let me know. I would love to know that. And I think that's going to wrap it up for now. I've been recording for a very, very long time and I still need to edit the video and have it be ready. So do you enjoy these types of videos where I just kind of talk to you guys without actually making a let's play? As you know, I don't do these very often, so let me know what you thought about it. I do have another video like this one coming next week, but this one is going to be about all the movies that I watched. It's going to be my first non-game related video on the channel. And you probably won't guess how many movies I watched this year. Just guess a number, and it's probably much higher than that. So it might be an extremely long video. Might end up being the longest video on the channel yet. So once again, thank you so much for watching. I'm wishing you guys a very Merry Christmas, and I will see you again very soon. À la prochaine.